This isn't Shark Tank, Melissa. It's reality, Josh said, laughing so hard his coffee nearly spilled over the bakery table. Tara joined in, flipping her perfect blonde ponytail. You seriously think people are going to line up for vegan cornbread? I just sat there, silent, heart pounding in my ears, cheeks burning. The little cafe we were in used to be our favorite meetup spot. Now it felt like a stage, and I was the punchline. I had brought my business pitch, printed on glossy paper, ready to share my idea with people I once considered my friends. But the room had already chosen sides. Mine was empty. The server came by and offered a refill. I shook my head. My hands were trembling under the table, but I kept my face calm. They kept laughing. And in that moment, I promised myself this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I grew up in a small town called Ashbrook, tucked away in the greenest part of Oregon. A place where everybody knew everybody, and where everyone thought they knew exactly who you were supposed to be. My name is Melissa Carter, and I was 29 when that conversation happened. The one where Josh and Tara laughed at me like I was some kind of joke. But my story doesn't start there. It starts much earlier. With flour-dusted hands in my grandmother's kitchen. Grams, Evelyn Carter, was the kind of woman who smelled like cinnamon and honey. Her hugs felt like home. She used to run a little bakery out of the side of her house back in the 70s, before it was trendy, before the gluten-free, sugar-free, dairy-free craze. Her motto? If you make it with love, they'll come back. That line stuck with me for life. When I was 7, she let me help her make her famous cornbread. We'd dance around the kitchen to old jazz music, and I'd sprinkle too much sugar or forget the baking powder. And she'd just laugh. Never scolded me. Just said, "Try again, baby." That's how you learn. By high school, I was baking for neighbors. By college, I was shipping cookies to dorms for $10 a box. It wasn't fancy, but it felt right. After graduating with a degree in business, which I mostly chose just to learn how to legally do what I loved, I came back to Ashbrook. I didn't have much: a secondhand mixer, my grandmother's cornbread recipe, and an old laptop with a cracked screen. But I had a dream. I wanted to open a business that brought together everything I loved: old-fashioned warmth, healthy ingredients, and a little twist of Southern soul. Something that honored Grams. Something that made people feel like they mattered. But dreams cost money. And I didn't have any. That's when I turned to the people I trusted. Josh and Tara. Josh had been my childhood friend. We went to the same schools, played on the same soccer team, even had our first kiss under the bleachers in 10th grade. We weren't romantically involved anymore, but there was a closeness that never fully went away. Tara was his girlfriend turned fiancée. She was sharp, confident, and had inherited her family's hardware store downtown. Together, they ran it well. I admired them. When I told them about my idea for a boutique-style comfort food cafe, Graham's Table, I called it, they listened. Or at least, I thought they did. I showed them mock-ups I'd sketched out, ingredient lists, target demographics, even a tentative budget. I'd found a vacant unit near Main Street that I could lease cheaply. It wasn't big, but it had potential. Josh nodded. Tara tilted her head like she was inspecting a flea market item she didn't want. "It's cute," she said finally. "But Ashbrook's not Portland, Mel. People don't care about oat flour here." I laughed nervously. You'd be surprised. I've been doing pop-ups at the farmer's market. People really like the lemon thyme muffins and the lavender cornbread. Josh sipped his coffee. I mean, sure, it's nice as a hobby, but as a business? He gave Tara a look. I don't know. You might want to think a little more realistically. I left that day feeling hollow, but I wasn't ready to give up. I picked up extra hours as a delivery driver just to afford the first month's rent on the shop space. I used every bit of my savings and took a small loan under my name. I worked nights from my tiny apartment kitchen, experimenting, refining, tasting, failing, and starting over. I burned more batches than I can count. But every time I wanted to give up, I remembered Graham saying, "Try again, baby. That's how you learn." I cleaned the shop space myself, scrubbed old grease stains off the walls, painted over graffiti, sanded, and polished the countertops. My hands bled from the work, but my heart was steady. I printed flyers, built a website, opened an Instagram account, and started a pre-order menu. And people came. Not in droves, not right away. But they came. Word started to spread. "Melissa's food feels like a hug," someone wrote in a review. I cried that night. Then one morning I got a call from Josh. "Hey, you free to grab coffee later? Me and Tara have an idea to pitch you." I remember smiling. Maybe they believed in me now. Maybe they saw what I saw. We met at a new cafe that had just opened, ironically, a chain. Sleek, impersonal, cold. That's when they hit me with it. "We're opening a brunch spot," Tara said, pulling out a manila folder. "Josh is putting in the capital. We want it to be stylish but down to earth. Kind of like your concept, actually. Farmhouse chic. You know." I blinked. "Wait, you're opening a place similar to mine?" Josh leaned forward. "We're calling it Fork and Nest. And we want you to work with us. You'd be great as a manager. You've already got the vibe, and we'll handle the rest." I felt like I'd been slapped. "You're offering me a job at a copy of my own idea?" Tara laughed lightly. "It's not copying, Melissa. It's inspiration. Besides, the town's too small for two similar concepts. Better to team up." I stood up. "I'll think about it," I said flatly and walked out before I cried in front of them. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at my grandmother's old apron hanging on the wall and whispered, "I don't know if I can do this." But then, something shifted. I looked around at my tiny kitchen. The sticky notes filled with recipe adjustments, the stacks of brown paper boxes, the faded newspaper clipping of Graham's in her heyday. I thought about the woman who built a business from her home in the 70s with no support and no shortcuts. If she could do it, so could I. I didn't confront Josh or Tara right away. I went quiet, strategically. I started doing the one thing they didn't expect me to do. I listened. I observed. I planned. While they celebrated the upcoming launch of Fork and Nest with social media countdowns and champagne toasts at their engagement party, I was busy collecting receipts. Not literal receipts, but evidence. Proof that their sleek little brunch dream was built on the bones of my original idea. Every detail, down to the honey lavender butter, was something I had shared with them during my pitch weeks ago. They had even copied the hexagon tile backsplash design I had drawn in my notebook. A detail I never published anywhere. Only they had seen it. I didn't tell anyone, not even my cousin Lena, who was helping me with food prep on weekends. I knew I couldn't fight them emotionally. If I wanted to win, I had to play smart. So I got a lawyer. Not a high-priced fancy one, just a sharp woman named Elise Johnson in Portland who believed in small business justice. I brought her everything, my original business proposal, dated and signed. Emails, texts, sketches. I had even recorded one voice memo after my meeting with Josh and Tara, describing how hurt I was by the brunch concept, mentioning all the copied elements. Elise's eyes narrowed. "You might have a solid case here. Trade dress infringement and misappropriation of concept. Especially since you pitched to them directly." I nodded. But that wasn't enough for me. I didn't just want legal satisfaction. I wanted something bigger. So while Elise built the legal file, I was back in the kitchen. I made peace with every long night and aching wrist. I launched a crowdfunding campaign to expand Graham's Table into a pop-up food truck, and it exploded. People from Ashbrook and beyond started pitching in, not just with money but stories. One woman wrote, "I lost my husband last year. Melissa's cornbread reminded me of Sunday mornings with him." Another man said, "My daughter won't eat anything but Melissa's sweet potato biscuits. Thank you for making something real." That's when I realized my power wasn't just in recipes. It was in connection. 2 weeks before Fork and Nest's grand opening, I heard through a friend that Josh and Tara were planning to pitch their business on a local investors panel, a stepping stone toward franchising in the region. The event would be filmed. Public. That was my moment. I RSVP'd to the panel as a guest. Elise came with me. The venue was full of local business owners, angel investors, and press. Josh wore a tailored gray suit. Tara, in her high heels and sleek black dress, looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. Their slideshow beamed behind them as they took the stage. Fork and Nest is the future of boutique brunch, Josh said confidently. A locally inspired menu with rustic visuals and eco-conscious values. They spoke eloquently. Tara was polished.
But I noticed something.
They never mentioned where the concept came from. Not once. After their pitch, the moderator asked if anyone in the audience had questions. I stood up. Hi, Melissa Carter here. I run Graham's Table, a comfort food pop-up here in Ashbrook. Josh's face turned pale. I'm curious, I said, holding a folder. When you developed your menu and aesthetic for Fork and Nest, did you reference any existing businesses or proposals shown to you by, say, a colleague? The room went quiet. Tara smiled stiffly. We're inspired by many sources. Pinterest, design blogs. I have documentation, I interrupted calmly. Emails, pitch decks, and timeline evidence that suggest your concept was derived directly from mine. I'm currently pursuing legal action. I thought potential investors should be informed. I held up a flash drive. Everything you need is here. The silence cracked like ice underfoot. One of the panelists cleared his throat. Josh. Tara? Do you want to respond? Josh's mouth opened, then closed. Tara looked like she might faint. Elise stepped beside me, introducing herself and confirming our pending case. She passed copies to the investors, who took them seriously. After that moment, everything changed. The pitch was over. But more importantly, so was the illusion. Back in the parking lot, I stood by my truck as Josh followed me out. Melissa, what the hell was that? That, I said, sliding the folder back into my bag, was me standing up for what's mine. You blindsided us.
No, Josh.
You used me. You stole my work. I just lit a match, so everyone could see it.
He scoffed.
You'll never make it beyond Ashbrook. I smiled. I already have. Because what he didn't know was, I just signed a lease that week for a storefront. 3 blocks from Fork and Nest. And it wasn't just any lease. It was for the exact location Tara's parents' hardware store used to be in, the store they sold off quietly after profits declined. I had been watching, waiting. They mocked my idea. I bought their old store. When the panel ended, Josh and Tara disappeared from the event, humiliated. But that wasn't the end of it, not by a long shot. The next few days, their tone shifted drastically. First came the text. Josh. Hey, can we talk? Tara, you didn't have to go public like that. We could have handled it as friends. I ignored the first few. I wasn't interested in apologies wrapped in manipulation. But when Tara showed up at Graham's Table's food truck, dark sunglasses, tight-lipped, a forced smile, I knew it was time. Melissa, she said, can we speak in private? I nodded, leading her behind the truck to a quiet alley between 2 buildings. I want to clear the air, she began. What happened at the panel was unfortunate, but I think we can still salvage something. I folded my arms. Salvage what? Your brunch brand built off the back of my business plan? Her voice dipped into that familiar patronizing tone. You're being emotional. This isn't personal. It's business. That did it. I stepped forward, keeping my voice low and steady. You stole my vision, Tara. You gaslit me into thinking it wasn't worth anything, then dressed it up in shiny graphics and tried to sell it like it was your own. You don't understand how hard we've worked on this. I leaned closer.
No.
You don't understand how hard I've worked. You took the path of shortcuts. I took the path of long nights, burnt fingers, and real sweat. The only reason you're here is because I gave you access. She flinched, but her mask stayed up. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. No, Tara, I said, stepping back. This is exactly as big as it needs to be. Within a week, their social media pages went quiet. Investors pulled out. One of them even came to my launch and told me he'd never seen someone shut down a fake so gracefully. But of course, the final blow hadn't landed yet. One afternoon, I received a call from a mutual friend. You need to see this, she said. Check the Ashbrook Community Facebook group. I opened it and saw a post titled, Local Brunch Spot Fork and Nest Faces Lawsuit Over Stolen Concept. Details inside. The article was shared over 300 times in 2 hours. And then came the real twist. Someone leaked a private voice note of Tara mocking my menu during a brunch tasting party. She calls it soulful? It's just cornbread and thyme. Melissa's trying to turn leftovers into a legacy. That voice note broke the internet, at least in Ashbrook terms. By the end of the week, the fork and nest sign came down. And guess what went up? Graham's table, in big, gold-lettered signage.
Yes.
I had quietly acquired the space they'd hoped to build an empire in. But the story didn't end with signs and lawsuits. Josh came to see me. Alone. It was the first time I'd seen him truly shaken. He looked small. "Melissa," he said. "I messed up." I didn't respond. "I should have protected your idea. I knew Tara was taking too much from your pitch, but I didn't stop her. I didn't stop us. I was afraid. That I'd outgrow you?" He looked down.
Yeah.
I exhaled, and for a second, the memory of our 10th grade kiss under the bleachers flashed before me. The boy who helped me fix my bike when I was 12. The boy who once said I'd do something big.
"I don't hate you, Josh," I said.
"But I won't ever trust you again." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "Fair." He left, and I closed the door behind him, not just physically, but emotionally. That chapter was over. A few weeks later, something happened that solidified everything. Lena, my cousin, my right-hand woman, came to me and said, "You know who showed up this morning before we opened?" I raised a brow. "Who?" "Mrs. Laney." Mrs. Laney had been Tara's mother's best friend. A tough, blunt, old woman who never really liked me. She said, "I wanted to see for myself. Everyone's been talking about your sweet potato pies." I grinned. "And she bought two." That was the day I knew I didn't just win back my business. I reclaimed my name in this town. People stopped seeing me as that girl who bakes and started recognizing me as the woman who built something real. Through betrayal. Through gaslighting. Through stolen ideas and whispered mockery. I didn't break. I rose. After the confrontation, after the lawsuits, after the public humiliation of Josh and Tara, there was a strange, hollow quiet. No applause. No finish line banner. Just the soft hum of life continuing, like it always does. But something was different. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waking up with a pit in my stomach. My mornings were slower. I could hear the birds outside my window. The kitchen smelled like nutmeg and new beginnings. Graham's table had officially moved into its new permanent space, the one that used to be Tara's family's hardware store. We kept some of the original architecture as a nod to its history. Exposed brick. Reclaimed wooden shelves. A chalkboard wall where kids could doodle while their parents sipped coffee. One morning, as I was wiping down the counter, Lena came in carrying a bucket of fresh sunflowers. "They were left at the door," she said, placing the bucket near the window. There was a card attached. "To the one who stayed true, thank you for reminding this town what real flavor and real courage tastes like. A neighbor you've never met, but always admired." I didn't know who sent it, but I felt it deep in my chest. That week, a surprising email popped into my inbox. Subject: Local Women in Business Spotlight. Interview request. It was from a regional magazine that featured women entrepreneurs. They wanted to do a spread on Graham's table, photographs, recipes, my story. I almost deleted it, afraid it would stir the past again. But then I remembered something Graham's once told me years ago. When the wind finally turns in your favor, don't hide. Raise your sails. So I did. The interview was raw. I didn't sugarcoat the betrayal. I didn't drag names either. I focused on what mattered: resilience, creativity, and the choice to rise without stepping on others. That article got shared over and over. Customers started coming in from neighboring towns just to taste the biscuits that outlived betrayal, as one food blogger put it. But what moved me the most was Lisa. Lisa was one of Tara's closest friends back when all this started. She had stayed neutral through everything, or so I thought. One Saturday, she showed up at the storefront, standing quietly in the corner until the crowd thinned out. "I owe you an apology," she said. I tilted my head. I saw everything that was happening. I heard Tara mock your business plan. I watched Josh nod along.
I should have said something.
I was afraid of losing my circle. But the truth is, I lost myself in that silence. Her hands trembled slightly. Do you think someone like me could ever start again? I reached over the counter and held her hand gently. You just did. Lisa started volunteering at Graham's table on weekends. At first, she washed dishes. Then she started baking. One day, she nervously offered a tray of lemon lavender scones she'd made from her grandmother's old recipe. They were divine. By the following month, we added them to the menu as Lisa's Light. Watching her regain her confidence reminded me why I started in the first place. Graham's table wasn't about just food. It was about legacy, healing, and second chances. As for Josh and Tara, well, Ashbrook has a short memory for drama, but a long one for character. Josh left town quietly. Tara tried rebranding herself as a lifestyle consultant, but no one trusted her anymore. Her curated Instagram posts felt hollow after her deception had been exposed. I never wished them ill. I just no longer wished them anything. That, I realized, was freedom. One evening, Lena and I sat outside the shop on two old rocking chairs, sipping hibiscus tea. She looked at me and smiled. You know what's crazy? What? If they hadn't stolen your idea, you might still be running a pop-up truck, afraid to dream bigger. I laughed, a deep belly laugh. So you're saying I should thank them?
No.
I'm saying you should thank yourself for not letting them be the final word. And just like that, a weight lifted. The next morning, I posted a message on our storefront bulletin board. Handwritten. Simple. To anyone who's ever been told your dream is too small, too soft, too sentimental, walk through these doors. You're home now. 6 months had passed since the day I stood in front of that panel and reclaimed my voice. Ashbrook was changing. And so was I. Graham's table wasn't just a cafe anymore. It had grown into a full-blown community hub. We started hosting weekly story-sharing nights, where locals would come in, sip peach tea, and share pieces of themselves, childhood memories, heartbreaks, secret recipes, poetry. The warmth in those evenings? It felt like home, like Graham's. We added a new program called Second Bake, a mentorship initiative where women over 40 could come in and learn how to run their own micro-businesses using family recipes or homemaking skills. We gave them a platform, a voice, and a place to start again. One of our first success stories? Lisa. She turned her lavender scones into a full catering service for small events. Her first solo event was a baby shower, hosted, of course, at Graham's table. I stood in the back that day, watching her hand out plates with pride. She wore a yellow apron. Her cheeks were rosy, her posture tall. She was blooming. Outside, we turned the old parking lot into a garden space. Kids played near the herb beds. Retirees volunteered on Saturdays to tend the tomatoes. We hung string lights across the wooden fence, and every Thursday night, local musicians played while the smell of cornbread and roasted garlic floated through the air. Ashbrook had never felt so alive. One morning, I received a letter. Not an email. A real, handwritten letter. It was from Josh. Melissa, I know I don't deserve a second thought from you, but I want you to know I left Ashbrook because I needed to learn who I was without trying to copy greatness. You were always the real visionary. I hope someday I can create something half as honest as Graham's table. Thank you for showing me what that kind of strength looks like. I folded the letter, pressed it between the pages of Graham's old cookbook, and let it rest there. I didn't need closure from Josh anymore, but I appreciated the echo of humility. Fall came early in Ashbrook that year. Golden leaves dusted the sidewalks. Cinnamon filled the air. People stood in long lines, chatting about which pie was best, my pecan butter crumble or Lisa's pear cardamom. And in the middle of it all, I stood at the front window of Graham's table, wearing her old brooch, the one she gave me the week before she passed. Build something that feeds more than just the stomach, she had said. Feed their hope, child. I think I finally understood what she meant. At our 6-month anniversary event, Lena tapped her glass and asked for quiet. I'd like to make a toast, she said. To Melissa. She reminded this town who we really are, resilient, warm, creative, forgiving. And she proved that when a woman decides to rise, not even betrayal can stop her. The crowd applauded. I blinked back tears. And in that moment, I saw the full circle. The little girl stirring batter in Graham's kitchen. The teenager too shy to speak up in class. The woman who'd almost walked away from her dream because of doubt and stolen credit. And now, the founder of something real, something good, something lasting. I stepped outside just as the sun dipped low on the horizon. A little girl ran past me, holding a flower-shaped cookie. Her father called after her with a laugh. The lights twinkled. The tables were full. There was music, laughter, life. And I realized, this was never just about revenge. It was about remembering who I was and becoming who I was always meant to be. In the end, I didn't just win back what was stolen. I built something bigger than the theft, bigger than me, bigger than even Graham's could have imagined. As I locked up for the night, I looked at the quote painted on the inside of our doorframe, Graham's words, in her handwriting. The sweetest revenge is a life that needs none. And with that, I turned off the lights, stepped into the night air, and smiled.